Okay, let's dive right in. We're looking at something pretty fascinating today, maybe a bit unexpected. It's this question. Why is Cyrus the Great, the ancient Persian king from way back, over 2,500 years ago, why is he held in such, well, high regard, even affection, by Jewish people?
It does seem like an unusual connection at first glance, doesn't it?
Totally. So we've got this great analysis based on a source that digs into this exact thing.
Yeah.
And our mission here really is just to use what's in this analysis to understand the story, the specific history that cemented this, well, unique relationship.
Right. And to really get it, we kind of have to set the scene. Think back to around 605 BC. The big players in that part of the world were the Median Empire. King Cyaxares was in charge there, and the Babylonian kingdom. These two powers, they'd actually teamed up, formed an alliance.
Okay. Against who?
Primarily against the Assyrian Empire. And they were successful. They defeated Assyria. And this alliance, the Median Babylonian one, they really locked it down with a strategic marriage. King Cyaxares of Media gave his daughter Amytis to Nebuchadnezzar.
Nebuchadnezzar,
Yeah.
son of the Babylonian king.
Exactly. And Nebuchadnezzar, of course, he became incredibly powerful later on, really a major figure. Actually, this source mentions that story, that he supposedly built the Hanging Gardens of Babylon for Amytis.
Oh, right. One of the seven wonders. Maybe to make her feel less homesick for media.
That's the traditional story, yeah. So you have this powerful Babylonian king, Nebuchadnezzar.
And he starts looking west, is that right? Towards places like modern-day Palestine.
Precisely. His ambition turned towards those western lands, and that included Jerusalem, where the Jewish people live.
Okay, so here comes the conflict.
It does, and the analysis we're looking at, it breaks down Nebuchadnezzar's actions against Jerusalem into three distinct campaigns. First time he shows up, the Jewish king, Josiah, he basically takes stock and realizes, they're completely outgunned.
Oh, no fight.
No fight. He surrenders straight away. And because it was peaceful, Nebuchadnezzar actually spares the city, spares the people. He did take 4 prominent Jewish leaders, sort of elders, back to Babylon, like hostages,
Right, as leverage.
Exactly. And he replaced Josiah with a governor who would report back to Babylon, so they could still kind of rule themselves, but under Babylonian control. No bloodshed that first time, which is key.
Okay, seems relatively contained, I guess.
For a moment, yeah. But then a few years later, things change. The Jews in Jerusalem, they see Babylon taking some hits in other wars.
Against Egypt and Yemen, the source mentioned.
That's right. So they figure, okay, Babylon must be weaker now. Let's rebel. Let's stop paying tribute.
Risky move.
Very. Nebuchadnezzar comes back fast. Second campaign. And again, faced with his army, the Jews surrender without a fight. But this time, Nebuchadnezzar isn't quite so lenient. He decides to teach them a lesson. He executes the governor he'd put in charge.
The Jewish governor. Wow.
Yeah. And he exiles about 300 more people to Babylon. But interestingly, still doesn't destroy the city or the temples. Not yet.
You'd think that would be enough to deter them, but no.
Apparently not. Because about a year and a half later, the source says Egypt kind of nudged them into it, and they rebelled again.
Third time. Really pushing their luck.
Definitely. And this time, Nebuchadnezzar had clearly had enough. He decided to end it for good. He brings a huge army, captures Jerusalem, and this time, it's total destruction.
Oh, my.
Yeah. He razes the Jewish temples, Solomon's temple included, gone. He executes the governor and his entire family. And then a much larger group, around 1,000 important people, leaders, rabbis, priests, their families, they're all taken in chains to Babylon.
And what about the people left behind?
They're forced under direct Babylonian rule. Basically told, you have to give up your Jewish traditions, your way of life, forever.
That sounds absolutely devastating. Exile for the leadership, suppression for those remaining,
Yeah.
facing the loss of their entire identity.
Exactly. And for the Jewish people, both those in Babylon and the ones struggling back home, the next few decades were bleak.
Yeah.
Their culture, their religion, their traditions, it all started to weaken, to fade. The source really emphasizes this period of decline.
How long did this last?
Well, the timeline here puts it at roughly 50 years. From that destruction around 586 BC up until the next big event.
Okay. So they're really facing the potential end of their identity as a people.
It seems like it was a very real threat, yeah. Their whole way of life was just eroding.
But then, something changes. About 50 years later.
Right. Around 539 BC, big turning point. Cyrus the Great, the king of Persia, conquers Babylon.
Okay. The Persians take over from the Babylonians.
Exactly. And what Cyrus does next, according to this analysis, is just crucial for the Jewish people. Almost immediately after taking Babylon, he issues a decree.
What is it?
It specifically allowed the Jewish people to return home, to go back to Jerusalem.
Wow. Just like that.
Not only that, he also gave them money, funds from the royal Persian treasury to help them rebuild their temples.
He funded the rebuilding.
Yes, and he actively encouraged them to revive their traditions, to go back to their previous way of life that Nebuchadnezzar had tried to extinguish.
So he lets them go home, pays for the temple rebuilding, and tells them to be Jewish again. That's a complete reversal.
It's a night and day difference from the Babylonians, and this source really hammers that point home. It says Cyrus's actions literally saved the Jewish people from complete destruction, not just physical, but cultural, religious destruction.
Because he enabled them to return, rebuild their core religious site, and reclaim their identity after decades of it being suppressed.
Precisely. He gave them the chance to survive and continue as a distinct people and culture.
And the story doesn't just stop with Cyrus, does it? This policy continued.
That's what the analysis indicates. From that point on, through the whole Achaemenid Persian era, Jerusalem and that area were basically a province, a satrapy of the Persian Empire. And Cyrus's successors, well, they largely followed his lead. Darius the Great, another big Achaemenid king, is mentioned specifically.
What did Darius do?
He also continued to help the Jews rebuild their temples, provided significant financial aid too. And the source suggests this supportive approach was pretty much the standard for most of the Achaemenid kings.
And the result? Did it lead to peace in that province?
Apparently so. The source notes that during this whole period, there weren't any significant rebellions from those Jewish communities. Seems the policy worked.
Okay, so this is it. This whole story, the destruction, the exile, the potential loss of identity, and then Cyrus stepping in, allowing the return, funding the rebuilding, encouraging the traditions. That's why he's held in such high regard.
That's exactly the explanation given in this analysis. He wasn't just a conqueror passing through. His specific actions were seen as deliverance, liberation. And the ultimate sign of this deep reverence, the source points out, is really quite extraordinary.
What's that?
In parts of the Old Testament, the Torah, Cyrus is actually referred to with titles like Messiah and Savior.
Messiah, Savior. For a Persian king.
Yes, because of what he did. Allowing their return, facilitating the rebuilding, essentially rescuing their identity from the brink. That's how profound his impact was seen to be.
Wow. Okay. So we've traced it all out based on this analysis from the early empires and alliances through Nebuchadnezzar's campaigns, the terrible exile, the cultural decline, to the pivotal moment with Cyrus the Great conquering Babylon, and then the whole Persian era of allowing return and supporting revival.
Yeah, it lays out that specific sequence of events very clearly.
So this deep dive, using just this source, hopefully gives you a much clearer picture now of this really significant, maybe surprising historical connection.
Pulled straight from the analysis provided.
And now you really get a sense of why Cyrus holds that unique place. It really makes you think, though, doesn't it? Just how much the fate of an entire people can turn on the decisions, the policies of a ruler from a completely different background in a distant empire.
It's quite something to consider, the ripple effects of one leader's choices.
Yeah, and maybe even more, what does this story tell us about the power, the sheer resilience of a people's identity, their culture, their religion, to survive even things like conquest, exile, and suppression?
That's a powerful thought to end on, how identity endures.